Tropical Storm Nicole made landfall as a hurricane early today near Vero Beach, Florida, setting a new record as the latest in the year that a hurricane has ever hit Florida's Atlantic coast.
Let's get a little more on this right now. We're joined live by Dave Phillips, a senior climatologist for Environment Canada. Dave, what about this stands out the most to you? Is it the time in the season, like the lateness of this storm, or was it about Nicole that you're noticing or paying attention to?
You know, guys, it's been an interesting hurricane tropical storm season. First of all, at the beginning, we wonder, where are they? There's none of them. We had one of the quietest beginnings. And then, of course, we saw multi-million-dollar Fiona, and we saw multi-billion-dollar Ian. And then it kind of went into a little bit of a calmness, and now we're into November. Now, you know, the hurricane season starts in June 1st and ends in the end of November. That's the peak time. Now, of course, storms don't necessarily look at the calendar and decide when to start ripping and roaring. I've seen hurricanes in December. So, and also in May. So it doesn't really follow that kind of season, but it really is rare. Typically in November, you get maybe 5% of your tropical storms in the Atlantic. We have maybe 15, 16, 1, maybe one a year, less than one a year. The most, of course, is September, where you get maybe 37% of your storms. So this is a bit rare, and for good reasons, guys. I mean, the water has cooled off. I mean, that is really the fuel that drives these kind of systems. And there's this kind of dance that takes place between the atmosphere and the ocean, and that's just not there in November.
Okay, so we talked about the rarity of this happening in November.
Yes.
As a climatologist, Dave, does this concern you? Should we be watching for any kind of pattern that emerges that has us thinking, uh-oh, climate change?
You know, Jennifer, I think every time we get one of these kind of rare kind of events, it's not really rare, but it's infrequent, people immediately go to the card of climate change. And that's all right. I can deal with that. But I think that what we see with these kinds of events, when they're very rare, it's hard to get a good trend on them. You just don't have enough sampling to say, well, is this early, later, or more than normal, or not more than normal? I think, guys, the potential for earlier starting season hurricanes and tropical storms and later is going to be greater because we're going to see warmer water, and of course, as they say, that's the fuel. We'll also see the atmosphere will set up more longer, and so that we could very well see what we've seen in October, maybe in 50 years from now, maybe in kind of November. So we know with climate change, the seasons, the frequency, the intensity of weather changes, and it wouldn't surprise me at all to see later and earlier tropical storm season.
Okay, so with that in mind, what does this mean to sort of how you sort of forecast, or can you forecast at all when you see this, or do you need to see more of this trend to sort of start saying, yes, this could be the case in 50 years? How do these sort of storms that sit on the outliers on either end sort of impact the work you do?
Well, Nick, it's a good question, and I think that it's hard because it is so infrequent. It's hard to really say, well, is this just a bad luck, or is this clearly a change in our physical system on planet Earth? And so I think that with thunderstorms, of course, with heat waves, it's easier to sort of decide that and make a call as to whether this is more frequent. I think that clearly, though, what we see is they're not going to go away. And we clearly think we're going to be more impacted by these events, and particularly in Canada, because we know the water temperature is warming up. And often what destroys these tropical storms is the cooler water. So if the water stays warmer longer, then we should expect the season to be longer in Canada. And so my sense is that there will be there's something about hurricanes that will change because of climate change, but it won't be so dramatic. We're not going to see an end to them. We're not going to see double or triple the number of storms. But we certainly will see characteristics like the seasonality to it, I think will clearly be a factor.
Okay, that might be a relief to a lot of Floridians in Vero Beach who have lost their seawalls and beachfronts. All right.
Yes.
Dave Phillips, senior climatologist for Environment Canada. Always great to chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, guys.